Step 3 of the sequential evaluation process, the process that everyone who applies for Social Security Disability or SSI has to go through. Okay, so step 3 concerns is when we finally get to whether you have a listing level MDI, medically determinable impairment. So there is, one can meet the listing exactly, or they can determine that you might not meet it, but what you have equals it. It's kind of a little esoteric there. So the listings, and they're referred to as the blue book listings. There's adult and there's child, and you can find them right on ssa.gov, blue book listings. I will say, I do not think most people that win by listing. I think most of them do it the other way, which we'll be getting to. But, and the listings are, some people think if they have an impairment that is listed, like I see the title, spinal impairment, I win. No. That's just helping categorize. Then you look in there and you see which kind, and you see if you meet, the medical evidence shows X, Y, and Z. So it has nothing to do with what you can and cannot do. It's what your medical evidence says in terms of, sometimes it is episodes that have to occur, decompensations. Sometimes it is certain diagnostic results from tests that will prove it's a listing, So it's some of them are very complicated. I find the cardiac ones to be a little complicated. But in any event, you might meet the listing or you might equal the listing, and that would be determined by a medical expert with the SSA. If you do not meet a listing, which, like I said, I get the sense that most people don't. If you do not meet it, then you're going to go on to step 4. If you did meet it, the buck stops and you win your case. But if you go on to step 4, before doing so, because you didn't meet a listing, so you have to continue, but before continuing, they need to determine, well, you don't meet a listing, so what can you do? What can you not do? What is the specific limitations this already determined, medically determinable impairment that has lasted or is expected to last 12 months, what does it do that stops her from working? Okay, and that is known as residual functional capacity, RFC, and they make that assessment. They use the medical records to make it. So that you've heard of the things about, her RFC is light, sedentary, heavy, medium, one of those categorizations, and that's what they're talking about with residual functional capacity. Except after you get that exertional amount, sedentary, light, medium, heavy, they will include any other limitations you have. If you have, arthritis in your fingers, if you have a bad back, that limits, well, usually that would go under exertional, so I shouldn't say that. It could limit postural, because of the bad back, they don't want you up on scaffolds. So they might say no scaffold. That's a limitation. Okay. Once they have the RFC and all the little, areas it can go into besides exertional, then you get to go down to step 4. And we will talk about step 4 next time. Have a great one. Bye, guys. Good morning. Okay, so we're talking about the sequential evaluation process for adults when you have a Social Security disability or SSI claim. Now, you are either perhaps have just watched one of the individual segments on one of the 5 steps, and this will be an overview of what all 5 steps are, just so you know at what place you're in. Or you're just coming here for the first time and you are just going to learn right here what the 5 steps are without the details attached to them. So I will try to connect all the other ones to this. So if you need to pop to number 3 and find more details about it, you can, or 4 or 5 or 1 or 2. Okay, so this is just going to be the rundown of the 5 steps and their names and what they are. Super quick. Okay, so when you first file a claim, the first step that the SSA has to determine is, are you working SGA? If you are working SGA, and that's a term of art, there are playlists on this channel about SGA. If you are not disabled. They stop and your case is over. You lose. If you are not performing SGA, the work level of SGA, so this would include people who have stopped working altogether, of course, you get to go to step 2. Step 2 is, do you have a severe medically determinable impairment? One could think of that as a severe diagnosis, perhaps, although I'm sure it's not exactly that, but an MDI would have to be diagnosed, and it has to be diagnosed in the medically acceptable manner. And all of that is through your medical records. So that's where all the medical boom, boom, boom treatment is really important to get to that point. If you do not have a severe medically determinable impairment, even if you have medically determinable impairments, because who doesn't at least have small ones, if you do not have a severe one, just one, you will be denied. Stop, you're out the door, the case is over. If you do have at least one severe MDI, you get to go to step 3. Step 3 looks at your severe MDI and all your other MDIs, severe and non-severe, although it would be a severe one that would have to lend itself to a yes here. Does it meet or equal a listing? They're referring to the Blue Book listings. You can find them at ssa.gov. And if it meets the details within the description of that listing, of that kind of impairment, you will, if yes, be found disabled at step 3. Game over. You're done in terms of you just won the hardest battle of proving that you are medically disabled. Then they would go on to anything non-medical, like, well, did you even have the insurance? Or if it's SSI, are you poor enough? That's at a different office. But the big hard battle that everyone fights sometimes for years on just ended for you if you meet or equal a listing at step 3. Step 4, you go to step 4 if you're not found disabled at step 3. So that's a little switch, right? If you do not meet a listing, before they go to step 4, they're going to find out what your RFC is. What is your residual functional capacity to work? And that is a whole term of art, and the details are pretty complicated. You go on to step 4 with that RFC assessment in hand, and the question is, can that person, despite those limitations, given his RFC assessment, is there other work? I'm sorry, can he do his past relevant work? Past relevant work is a term of art also. It's got some tests that it has to meet to be considered past relevant work. So you might want to look up that playlist for that. If he can do his prior relevant work, any of those jobs that fall within that category, not disabled. Boom, end of story. Your case loses at step 4. If step 4 finds it, can't do his past relevant work, that is a little too arduous in one way or another, then you get the privilege of going to step 5. Step 5 is there any other work in the national or regional economy that this person can do? Work that exists in substantial numbers. If there is other work you can do of sufficient numbers, certain occupations, you are not disabled. You lose at step 5. That is a very common place to lose, as is step 4. If you cannot do any other work, they can't provide, and that burden is on them at this point, any other jobs you can do in sufficient numbers, then yes, you are disabled and you win at step 5. Okay, more details on 1 through 5, see at the end. I will put up I guess I'll put up a button for number 1. From number 1, you can see buttons for number 2. From 2, you can see a button for number 3. So they will go in sequential. If at the end you click on the button that should be in the upper corner there. Yeah, I think that's the only way I can really do it, but I hope it helps. All right. And If you have any questions, just leave them in comments and we'll talk about it later. All right, bye.